Hello, everybody. I am not one to shy away from a fun video to make, and good friend Ted from Nerd Immersion made a video on the top 10 RPGs he would like to play or run, kind of experience in 2022, and I like that idea so much that I wanted to do my own version of it. So these are the top 10 RPGs that I really want to play that aren't Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. In the number 10 slot is kind of a catch-all for the OSR. So I really love the OSR. Well, I love the OSR in general, but some of the interesting things that come out of there are these little zines that I've been buying that just have either a setting or a fun small adventure or like really cool, interesting mechanics. And I would love to run old school essentials or some other OSR style game that I'm not familiar with would be fun. But I do like old school essentials and just run through a bunch of these. Nightland is pretty cool, where it's an endless night and there's all these weird factions that worship the sun. Pungeon Quest is hilarious. I got that off a Kickstarter. I have most of the Wormskin magazines, or these zines, that detail the world of Dolmenwood, which is really cool. And then I got this one called Woodfall that I really like. That is a city hex crawl in this like swampy area. And so it's a mini setting that you can kind of put into a longer game. But a lot of these have fun NPCs, fun mechanics, and it would be really cool to just have a group that was okay with not doing a linear story and instead just like, this is what I want to run tonight. We're going to play Woodfall with the same characters. And alongside the OSR, it would also be really fun to run Temple of Elemental Evil. Since I bought this really heavy, awesome book, to utilize it would be fun. Up next with number 9 is Star Trek Adventures. There was a Humble Bundle that had like every Star Trek Adventures PDF out there and a coupon to get a certain percentage off of the hardback main book. So this is like one book of like a lot that they have for the Star Trek role-playing game. It's interesting. There's always that fight between Star Wars and Star Trek. And although I very much like Star Wars, I just grew up with Star Trek and I really like it. So I know the world of Star Trek. So I think this would be fun, but I only really want to play this with other Trekkies who, would enjoy it as much as I would. So, and I haven't found that group yet, but I think, running Star Trek Adventures or playing in it would be a lot of fun. Up next is a game called Worlds Without Number, and this is kind of a double one because there's a sci-fi version of this called Stars Without Number. This is more of a fantasy world-building book that has a role-playing game tied to it. This book's really crazy and fun to read. It has a lot of... it has a lot of world-building tools and tables to roll on. But there is a game here as well that I found very, very interesting. And then the Stars Without Number would be almost the same thing, but with a sci-fi twist of exploring galaxies and building planets and stuff. So either this one or Stars Without Number, I have both, but I only brought this book to show you because I didn't think about grabbing the other one. But it's on the shelf behind me. Call of Cthulhu. I did a Kickstarter backer for Call of Cthulhu, the 2nd or 3rd edition. It was like a reprint that they wanted to do. So I backed that, which got me a whole bunch of Call of Cthulhu adventures and books. And I have the PDFs of all of those, but they haven't pushed the shipment yet. Then, talking about Call of Cthulhu on our Discord, one of my patrons mailed me this for a Christmas present. So thank you so much, Victor. This is really cool. I read through it. I haven't finished all the rules yet, but in order to explain the rules, there's literally a choose your own adventure. You build a character while reading through the choose your own adventure. And so I'm building the character, and then you start to roll dice, and depending on what you roll, which is really just like an A, B, sometimes an A, B, or C, you go to different pages to finish the whole adventure. a really creative way to explain how to play, to explain the tone, and to also explain the mechanics. And I thought that was really cool. So great job, Chaosium, for this product. This is the starter set. 100% recommend this. I always wanted somebody else to run Call of Cthulhu for me because it's one of those, I wanted to make sure that the mythos was properly represented in that horrific dread that you're supposed to feel. I don't know if I could pull it off, but at this point, if I want to experience a Call of Cthulhu game, it looks like I might be running it. We'll see. Up next is a game that I don't have a booklet for yet because it's Kickstarted, but the 0 version of the rules are still floating around on the internet, and that is Mothership, which is a sci-fi horror RPG. Very much in the vein of Alien, but different because it's not franchised by Alien or anything. Mothership, created by Sean McCoy, I believe, is really cool. There's a podcast that I listened to a while ago where they were kind of playtesting the rules, and I was very infatuated with that. And that's one of the few episodes of a podcast that I've listened to probably like 3 times to really like, what is happening? Like, this is so cool. With the version 1 coming out soon, both print and PDF, I think that this will be ran quite a bit in the indie sphere of tabletop RPG streamers and people. So hopefully I can play a round of Mothership because it seems really cool. But again, one of those that I don't know if I would get the actual dread across if I ran it, because I'm just kind of a little too goofy. Sometimes you just need like a more serious DM. Another game that I am intrigued by, but I don't own the physical book, just the PDF, is called The Magical Land of Yeld. And The Magical Land of Yeld is kind of a love tribute to old tactical adventure games like Final Fantasy Tactics. Specifically, I think it's very influenced by Final Fantasy Tactics. And you play on a chessboard, and so all combat kind of happens on this chessboard with your miniatures, and they can do certain things. It's a D6 dice pool system, and you have a very clear goal of going in and finding keys to unlock doors that will then free you from the magical land of Yeld. That being said, the DM rotates, so you actually get to play as a dungeon master or as a game master, because the next time you play, the game master thing will rotate and somebody else will run the delve on the chessboard. And I liked that idea that as you're playing, everybody gets a chance to have a character and everybody gets a chance to run the game. So not a lot of systems do that where it's built in mechanically to kind of shift everything so that everybody gets to experience all the different kinds of play. The art's really cool. It's super fun. I don't know. It had some really interesting spellcasting mechanics that dealt with like the D6 dice pool. I was really inspired by this game as I was researching a lot of other RPGs to try and write my own. Number 4 is a game that I don't have a physical copy for, but it is called The Mecha Hack. The Black Hack was an OSR game that was a hack of the White Hack, I think. I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but it's an OSR D&D fantasy game. The Mecha Hack is a hack of that. The art's really cool. The Mecha Hack seems really fun. It is a roll under D20 system. And then you can configure different modules and abilities on your mech so that your mech has different powers from other people's mechs. You could play with minis. You could play without minis. If you're into Gundam and giant fighting robots, I think it's easily a buy if you're into any of those. And it could be a lot of fun to play. Written by some really talented people. I love the Mecha Hack. I think it's really cool, and I want to run at least like a couple one-shots would be fun of the Mecha Hack, just to get a feel for it. Number 3 is Numenera, and this is kind of a cheat because I have played Numenera, so I shouldn't be like, this is what I want to play games that I've never played, but I just really like Numenera, and I want to run a couple more games of this in this coming year or the next coming 2 years. I don't know if it'll actually happen this year. But Numenera is Monte Cook Games, and it uses the cipher system, which is this kind of, you only roll a d20 and you're trying to hit like a certain number, but it's really a conversation with the game master on how you're going to get a certain number lowered or raised while you're talking to them. So the DM will say, hey, the difficulty of this monster to hit is like 18. And you're like, oh yeah, but like, wasn't I like standing on the cliff? And you're like, okay, yeah, so that would make it more like a 15. And you're like, okay, but like also I have this sword that does like extra damage against rocks. And you're like, okay, yeah, it's a rock monster, so we'll lower that even lower down to 12. And there are mechanics in there that are very specific about raising and lowering the difficulty to hit or to the difficulty you're trying to reach. But what I really loved about it is it felt like a fun conversation that if you can justify it and your DM or your game master is like willing, you can get that number all the way down to 0 so you automatically succeed. It's really fun. It's kind of cool. I like that experience points can be consumed to do other things rather than level up. And the world is so cool. Like, this could be its own YouTube channel of just like the lore of Numenera. Because it's just huge. Like, the world's so big and there's so much there. And Monte Cook he's got an amazing brain for creating worlds. This is another game that I have become very interested in called Forbidden Lands. Now, Free League, who made this, they also make Tales from the Loop and a game called Vaesen. And I've played Vaesen, and it's very fun. And they all utilize the same dice mechanic of like a big D6 pool that you're trying to count the number of successes. And you succeed by rolling a 6 on a D6. And so the better you are at something, the more D6s you get to roll, which increases your chance. This intrigued me specifically because I like the fantasy version of it. You are like, there's druids and wizards and stuff in this box, but it also came with a map and a setting. It felt like one of those legacy games because there are stickers and a map and a bunch of things where if certain things happen in the game, you get to alter the map permanently. One such thing I thought was interesting is if your character dies, you can put a little headstone of where they died and then remember them going forward and back. Like, oh, we're crossing that road again. Remember James? That was so sad when he got eaten by a bear. It's just a different type of fantasy game. Now, I think when I bought this, I imported it from Sweden because there wasn't a US-based store. But if I remember correctly, I believe Modifius is selling these now. So you can definitely go to their website and get a US shipped copy. Mine's in English. It's a US copy. I just had to get it like sent all the way over from Sweden. So. But of course, number one, what could be my number one game? Well, if you know me and follow me a whole bunch, then you understand that I am obsessed with a game called Invisible Sun. This is also a Monte Cook game. And there's a video of me like really old on the channel of when I first bought this. I bought the black cube. The game comes in this giant black cube and I unboxed it, not really knowing what I was getting into, but I was so intrigued by the design of this game. So the black cube holds a bunch of different books. This book specifically, The Way, is the book about character creation, which is why I just kind of grabbed it really quick so that you know how to make characters and what have you, and how to play. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff about Invisible Sun in that it's kind of like Harry Potter meets the Matrix, and that the world is not real, all of this really weird, interesting stuff. Super complicated mechanics, and I think that also intrigued me because Monte Cook made Numenera that had very simple mechanics. Like the cipher system is very streamlined and very simple and easy to pick up and to understand, and you roll one die. And this one was complicated on purpose. It's like he went in the opposite direction trying to create this. that being said, he created an amazing world, and there's a fun setting to play in. There are a whole bunch of really cool props that come with the game and tarot cards. And you take these tarot cards and you place them in this hand, which is called the Testament of the Sun. And the cards that you play with the tarot deck affect the entire gameplay. So depending on the cards that I pull, blue magic might be a higher powered this day. Green magic might be underpowered. Red magic might be overpowered, which makes demons stronger than normal. And there's a lot of fun random mechanics like that I enjoy. But also it's a story that I've never told. Like I've never done a weird avant-garde like RPG before. And this surrealism, like Salvador Dali landscape that Invisible Sun portrays has always intrigued me. So much so that I went out and I bought like everything Invisible Sun. In Ted's video, he was talking about the Changeling and how he bought the Changeling and has read every book of the Changeling and he loves it so much, but he wants somebody else to run it for him. I kind of feel the same way about this. I would love somebody who loves Invisible Sun to run it for me so that I can experience that side of it, because I just think it's so creative and amazing. Case in point, there's like little things like this. This is a book, and I'll take it out. And I guess I should explain that Invisible Sun has, there's the Path of the Suns. And I'll put it up on screen, but it's a big map where you go down the Path of the Suns, and they're all connected in some way. Well, there's a reverse path of that called the Night Side. And the Night Side is kind of, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, there we go. And so this is a book of Night Side specific spells and abilities and character options, basically like the dark evil side of Invisible Sun. And I was so intrigued with this because they mail it to you in this bag with a note that says, when the book is not being used, please keep it in this bag because this has a emblem on it that contains evil. So when it's not being used, you're encouraged to store it in here so that it doesn't like cause problems in the real world. And just little touches like that I thought was really cool. Like the attention to detail in this game is super fun. And like, who doesn't want really awesome props? And I don't know, there's just so many cool things about Invisible Sun. I could go on and on about it, and I have on Saturday Morning D&D show. I kind of put Invisible Sun as number one because it's the one I'm most obsessed with and the one I really do want to try and run for 2022. But I really would be happy to run or play any of these. I love D&D, don't get me wrong, and I love D&D 5th edition, but part of my enjoyment of Dungeons & Dragons is playing other games to steal ideas and mechanics and bring them to a long-form D&D game. So maybe in another video, I'll explain my top 5 campaigns that I want to run for D&D 5th edition, because that is also a list and very interesting. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe down below. And again, let me know what you think I should be playing for this year, or what is your favorite unplayed RPG that I should be checking out. Links down below to most of these. And I will see you guys all in the next video.